There are plenty of people who'd like a real-life Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and honestly, it could be closer than we think. Whether it's being delayed because of COVID or some other factor that we can't account for, a real-life Freddy Fazbear's would be fun as hell, no pun intended. There were people asking matpat and Scott to work together to make it happen, but guess what? I've come up with a strategy that could totally work, even if it may need some tweaking because it's the US and I'm working with like Canadian prices and laws and stuff, but it could still translate to an actual plan that can really work to get us a real-life Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, except hopefully without the murder and convoluted story that we don't totally understand. I even made a couple mock-ups so that this can actually happen. So, share this with Scott on Reddit if you want to see a real-life Freddy Fazbear's, and let me jump in. Firstly, location, right? The obvious answer here is to go with the closed Chuck E. Cheese location. Chuck E. Cheese recently has closed 34 locations across the US, with locations closing in California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So, any of these locations could be used as a potential first location at the very least, with some states having multiple closures. Buying one of these locations would be expensive, and online I couldn't find any real reports on how much it would be. You'd have to work that out with Chuck E. Cheese. However, to open and operate a Chuck E. Cheese location would range from $1.17 million to $1.83 million, with a franchise fee of $800,000, according to Chuck E. Cheese's section of franchisehelp.com. So assuming the higher end of the price range, this would require an investment of around $2.63 million. Not taking into account that these locations are closed and they're probably just looking to break even on it and maybe not make money. But which state should we be selecting? Well, looking on Google Trends, we can actually see what states search for Five Nights at Freddy's the most. Looking for the search term Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, since that would be the name of the location, we see Virginia searching it the most over the past 12 months as of April 2021, followed by Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Texas in that order. Comparing that to our list of states, Virginia is the state with the highest search and has a close location in Fredericksburg. And I don't know about you, but the fact that it's in Fredericksburg, like Freddy, that seems like fate to me. But there is also the thought of Florida, who is the second most searched and is only slightly less searched, so it's like a close second, and has multiple Chuck E. Cheese restaurants closed, located in Miami, North Lauderdale, Miami Gardens, and Green Acres, so there is room for expansion. Florida is also a popular tourist spot thanks to the Disney park in Orlando, where I would go with my family. I think we've went like 2 or 3 times. So it's probably a better idea to go with Florida's Miami location, even though Orlando and Miami aren't really that close, but it's still centralized, okay? And everything's open in Florida, so you can start work on it right away. So the Miami Chuck E. Cheese location is the first one to be bought by Scott Coffin. What would it look like? Well, many fan creations always make it appear the same as just a normal Chuck E. Cheese, but replacing the logo and text. Probably the most famous one being the image used in MatPat's old FNAF theories. But we could take this one step further. Since the inside of the restaurant is already seen in-game, we can take that same design concept and just convert it to real life. I feel like that's pretty obvious. With the red and black squares along the wall, potentially outlined with additional decoration. You would also need to either replace or repaint the tables and booths and stuff like that, along with replacing the posters on the wall and the banners hanging above. The purple would also be changed to another color, most likely red, or maybe more of the red and black square pattern we see along the walls in the first couple games. The animatronics, if included, could easily be updated with Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie designs. Well, I mean easy in comparison to everything else that needs to be done. And once that's done, you just need to replace the songs that play out of the speakers, and then boom, you got working stage shows. I don't know if Foxy would need to have his own section, or if you'd want to add that off to the side, or if you want to use the kind of separate stage that's on some of the Chuck E. Cheese stages. I don't know, it depends on the location, if it actually has one. But other than that, that's just more construction work. Now, what makes this different than your typical kids play joint, you ask? Well, it does actually have the FNAF characters, not infringing on copyright because Scott would be doing this all himself. There is another aspect of the place that I think would make this even more unique and bring in more sales. FNAF is a horror franchise after all, and for some reason a whole load of these kids love being scared crapless by the many animatronics. So why shouldn't this location offer a spooky surprise for anyone willing to come after dark? Much like how Security Breach will have a day and night cycle, why not let the restaurants have the same? Where instead of closing at 9 p.m., they swap to a creepy and horror-themed joint where the kids can come to get scared while eating pizza and playing games. You know, the lights can flicker, you have people dressed up, like a year-round haunted house. We could even get some of the games we see in Pizzeria Simulator, like Fruity Maze and Midnight Motorist, in real physical arcade machines. All you need is a TV monitor. People do it all the time on YouTube. It would actually be an incredible idea that would suck in a lot more people and increase profits late into the night. This also works for adults who are fans of the series, who may not want to deal with the children and the kid-friendly atmosphere that the location would have during the day. This time frame would feature actors in the FNAF suits, but not Springlock suits because, well, we all know how that ends. But this would be just like a Halloween haunt for our Canadian friends, or whatever Disney does. It's like Halloween Horror Nights or whatever it's called over there. People in costumes who can't touch but aim to scare, maybe jiggling some doors or hiring actors working as kids or patrons who get lured away, maybe even making a Nightmare Fredbear suit. There is so much that you can do. Oh, you can have like Foxy slowly peek out from behind it unless someone like looks or something like that. You can have him slowly peek out and then you can... Ah! Eventually, of course, you could expand, opening more Fazbear locations at the other closed Chuck E. Cheese's. And I feel like Chuck E. Cheese would be down for that too, because the resulting competition could help boost their sales as well, since there would be kids who don't want to go to a horror-themed joint at night, but have a newly ignited or rediscovered joy for pizzeria arcades and animatronic bands. And hell, even as a joke, you could open up Chica's Party World, because we all know that Scott's gonna have some form of like ARG with these locations if this is actually a thing. Scott, I have an idea for that too. Hit me up. The menu would serve pizza, obviously, but also themed meals like Chica's Chicken Wings or Bonnie's Breakfast for Dinner, since, you know, eggs. Maybe Foxy's Flapjacks. It will definitely use a little work, but I'm honestly thinking it would taste and look incredible, both the menu and the food respectively. I have a design in mind, but let's be honest, I can't show my whole hand, can I? No, I actually gotta leave some stuff to actually hopefully make this a thing. So, cause you know, if there's some mystery, Scott might actually like, you know, cause we all know how he loves mystery. And Scott, by the way, I'm happy to help. I love this series and would travel to see a Fazbear restaurant like this happen. And if you go with the Florida location like I suggested, everything is open, so you're already good to go. Maybe not morally speaking, but just like roleplay William Afton and you'll be fine. So, share this video with Scott on Reddit and any other media you can so he can help see it. Sky Daddy Scott, please make this a thing and please let me help. I promise I will be professional and I won't actually call you Sky Daddy Scott to your face. The menu is simple, since it's on a monitor and needs to be seen at a distance, with a red border and simple sans serif text describing the various dishes and listing prices, with images of the dishes of the 4 major characters on each of the screens: Freddy's Pizza, Chica's Chicken Wings, Bonnie's Breakfast for Dinner, and Foxy's Ultimate Nachos. I was going to do Ultimate Fries, but kids are going to find nachos more exciting than fries, even if the whole alliteration thing makes sense. And while the horror events are focused on adults, the majority of the fan base and patrons are going to be children. Hopefully not missing ones. Obviously, you can also offer alcoholic beverages like beer and perhaps margaritas for the parents of the kids during the day, and all the adults that will be coming in during the horror nights. More on that later. But other than that, it's a fairly straightforward menu. The menu has to be simple for the kids and anyone looking from a distance, and this is the kind of stuff I actually went to school for. I went over the interior design in the last part briefly, but only offered ideas instead of actually providing examples. So let's do that. Like I said last time, I think the purple sections of the wall should be replaced with red and black squares like we see in the original maps. And the white and black squares with the red outlines on the walls should go around the joint as well. We've seen the interior in the first few games, so we might as well just recreate something similar. The booths could just be repainted, or they could be separated into sections based on what animatronic is your favorite. Same with the party tables, with sections for Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy, with posters for each characters indicating those sections, as well as banners to indicate it overhead so you can see it at a glance. The stage may come with a separate section for Foxy known as the Galaxy stage for Chuck E. Cheese, which would easily be converted into Pirate's Cove. It's already a circle, you just put up a curtain. The arcade is probably the biggest reason anyone went to Chuck E. Cheese, the second being the recycled pizza conspiracy, and the third being because of the characters. However, the kids this time around will be coming for the FNAF characters and be staying for the arcade. The arcade could be filled with the normal games we see at normal Chuck E. Cheese's: skee-ball, whack-a-mole, basketball, knock-a-clown, all the rest. However, the biggest showstoppers could be FNAF-themed versions of these games. Whack-a-mole could be Whack-a-Mini-Rena, and Knock-a-Clown, you know, the one where you like throw the balls at the clown or like you throw them at its teeth, could be Popping Balloon Boy's balloons. There could be a photo booth that puts a nightmare animatronic or Springtrap behind the people in the booth for a real scare, and you could include custom games like Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Security Puppet. There are plenty of people who've made their own arcade cabinets. Take this one from the YouTube channel I Like to Make Stuff. Bob does an incredible job. And all Scott would really need to do is code full versions of these games. Oh no, a game dev having to code new games, so difficult. Actually, not even new games, games that he's already made, just full versions. The games would be incredibly popular and would result in high revenue since they wouldn't really provide tickets, so they'd just be spending coins to play real FNAF games, but getting nothing other than that in return so your prize counter doesn't lose anything. This is how the businesses think. They could also make machines for arcade versions of the original FNAF games, maybe having buttons that flip through cameras and you need to find Foxy before he gets to you or something along those lines. The prize counter could have a real version of the FNAF puppet box there, playing its signature music to provide a reason for why it's still closed. However, this could potentially be opened at night during the horror nights. If not, the person working at the prize counter could simply be dressed like the puppet. The prize counter could offer things similar to the one from Help Wanted, and offering signature items such as stuffed baskets of exotic butters, which have already been made by Funko. They could also offer FNAF Funko Pop figures, with rarer ones being valued higher, as well as potentially Switch and console versions of the games, along with the smaller prizes that are just meant to keep people from getting the big prizes by saving up. You know, the kids will impulse buy them. That's why they're there. This could also feature recreations of things like the Lore Keeper ending certificate, which you could potentially get by presenting something given to you after beating all 3 of the FNAF 6 games. You know, the ones in the custom cabinets I mentioned. There is way more we can talk about this, trust me. Now, the horror nights are what I find the most interesting out of these new ideas, with maybe these happening once or twice a week instead of every night like I said last time, thinking logistically and knowing that most people won't want to work all the nights. 9 p.m. would be when they would normally close, so instead, how about closing for an hour while the team sets up for a special treat for all who dare to return? The restaurant could be lit with black lights, revealing blood stains on the wall along with handprints and maybe some text written in blood, or paint that shows up under a black light, and not during the day. The lights in the bathrooms could be flickering, and most of the arcade machines would be off, aside from any that make loud noises, distract well, or could scare you. Skee-ball, basketball, balloon popping for example, as well as any custom ones like the FNAF 6 Lore Keeper minigames, or if any of the 8-bit minigames from FNAF 2 were recreated. Obviously, they would include jump scares at the end. The food would be limited to whatever you wanted, probably taking away the breakfast for dinner, and you could have actors walking around in nightmare-themed suits with the animatronics programmed to make sudden movements, since they need to move to keep their servos from locking up, but they can't really walk around. The music that plays could be replaced with atmospheric and scary themed music, like what we use for our videos, with periodic screams and maybe a couple faded door shakes and calls from Phone Guy, making sure that Scott Cawthon makes an appearance in the first Freddy's location. This would be the first pizzeria to do something like this, as of my knowledge, and the possibilities are endless. It would be a great first date as long as you're both into it, and it would increase profits tenfold, basically turning the place into a diet bar with horror elements, keeping the place open until 2 a.m. when you have last call at 1 or 1:30. I don't know how bars work. I turned 19 and then I didn't really go to bars, and then the whole pandemic thing happened, so I can't really go to bars now. Yeah, I don't know how bars work. I could talk about cash flow and investments, but that doesn't really interest you, I'm sure, because I have thought a lot about this and other opportunities that this would present. So there's always been this desire from the community for a real Freddy Fazbear's, and it's been present since the first game, because for some reason they all think that it's a good idea to have a restaurant whose fictional series is built around the murder of unknowing kids to have a real world counterpart. And while I do believe that it would make an incredible amount of money and it could be an outlet for Scott to divulge some more lore to us, there are plenty of sick people out there. So sick in fact that they might just want to recreate the games and may just take on the role of William Afton. And plenty of people have said that they're willing to die at a real Freddy Fazbear's as long as they get to contribute to making the FNAF story real. And that's honestly probably why Scott has at one point said that he didn't want to make one. But is this really the case? Has Scott just ignored the massive opportunity he has in front of him in the form of a real Freddy Fazbear's? Well, maybe not, but it's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. Let me explain. We know how dedicated Scott is to dates, both in-game and IRL, when releasing or talking about his games. He released FNAF 2 87 days after the first, like how we were all focused on the bite of 87 from the first game. Any date that he has put in the series has been solid, and even if things are changing, he always stuck to the bite of 87 and the bite of 83. Dates have always been important to Scott. And as any fan of the series that has at least tried their hand at their own timeline can tell you, FNAF 3 takes place 30 years in the future. In fact, the events of FNAF 3 take place in around 2023. And while that's quite the coincidence in-game, because like 30 years in 2023, I don't know why I think there's a coincidence, I think just maybe because they both have 3s. Anyway, the thought is that perhaps, while we may not get a real Freddy Fazbear's this year or the next, that 2023 is a possibility for when a real Freddy Fazbear's or even a real Fazbear Frights could open. I mean, if he started planning now, it would definitely take a while, right? Hell, maybe he's already started planning, but now he has to wait because of COVID, or he's just planning on opening it up in 2023. And by Fazbear Frights, I mean the location of the third FNAF game, not the book series. And I mean, they are going to need a set for the upcoming FNAF movie, whenever it ends up going out, so maybe this is all just getting us prepared for a real FNAF. I mean, there was that Nicolas Cage FNAF movie ripoff that I'm sure was just a cash grab trying to capitalize on the FNAF movie hype before the actual FNAF movie came out. But could this be what Scott was planning from the beginning? Getting everyone hyped for the possibility of a real location, or what a real location would look like in his mind with the movie and the books which expand on the lore, because he was planning to open one for 2023 at the same time that Fazbear Frights would have opened in the FNAF universe. It would make sense, especially for Scott. And he's really running out of ways to give us more lore hints at this point. He's already released 3 full novels along with like 9 books that all have 3 shorter stories inside. And those, and especially the Fazbear Frights books, yeah, don't think I didn't notice the name, all had insane lore clues that helped us distinguish parts of the series that we've been previously confused about. Like how William had survived being in a blocked off room for 30 years without food or water because he was possessed by a kid. It also explains how he survived the fire from FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, and how he managed to get a hard drive in order to possess it before FNAF VR so it could get scanned into the game and then he would become basically immortal. But now we've seen source code being used as a clue, the names of photo files that we've had to access with Notepad being a clue, audio files, voice actor listings. Hell, at one point I decoded the name of a color and how it relates to the Emily family as a clue. Not to mention the countless hours of searching through all the games and then the logbook and oh my god. And yet still nobody has figured out FNAF 4. There aren't many new things he could do to bring us innovative ways for hints, unless that's what this place would be for. And he used this place as an ARG of sorts, where you can get lore clues and maybe even some answers to things like FNAF 4, or even who caused the bite of 87. So we can have a definitive answer instead of being stuck on either Mangle or Toy Chica or Golden Freddy. Hell, pull a WandaVision and base the series off a new decade each week so we can actually be there for the bite of 87 when it takes place and then gets shut down and then it reopens the next week as a new decade. Huh? And for those people saying Scott already said he wouldn't do it, first of all, people change their mind all the time, whether the reason is financial or not, and this place would be a huge success, especially after Chuck E. Cheese closed over like 30 locations. The timing couldn't be better at this point, honestly. The big problem with this is the danger, and while I'm sure Scott would have as many security measures as he could, we need to remember what the story of the games is. It's about kids dying in these restaurants, and by one of the creators of the restaurants no less. I'm sure that Scott doesn't want to end up like Henry, These issues only heighten when you look at the discussions on this. I've seen comments on our videos talking about how they'd be happy to get stuffed inside of Freddy, and how they'd just be happy to die in Freddy Fazbear's. I'm not even going to make a joke about how you would rather want to be stuffed into Toy Chica, but also the comments about how they want to kill someone in a FNAF location, or how they want someone to kill someone in a FNAF location. No. Or how they want someone to go missing and the story of the games to be real. Look, I know you guys love the game, okay? I love it too. The story is incredible and cryptic in all the best ways. But what the hell? Like comments from the last video talking about what could be in like a real FNAF. Someone had commented, bro, if this became a thing, I would want to get murdered so I can possess a suit. That would be so epic. Ah, yes. No, it wouldn't be epic because you'd be dead. Possession isn't a real thing in the real world, okay? And even if it was, we don't know how it works. It's not like if there's a real world version of FNAF, that agony will be what determines you possessing something, okay? If possession was real, it wouldn't be something that simple, and it wouldn't be something you can control. And at that point, if you want to be murdered, it's not murder. Okay? It's self-assisted murder. Because, you know, if I say the actual word, YouTube's gonna flag this video. But that wouldn't cause you agony. You'd be happy to die. It wouldn't even work in the FNAF universe sense. But it's reasons like those that will ultimately get Scott to shut down this idea permanently. And even if they're meant as jokes, he probably wouldn't want to take the chance because, well, they may not all be jokes. And if anyone got hurt or worse because of something he opened, honestly, I don't think any of us would be able to forgive ourselves if we were the cause of that. Like if we were in Scott's shoes and we opened a Fazbear restaurant and then someone ended up getting killed because of the games and the restaurant, I wouldn't be able to handle it, I know that. Even for asking for it so much that he felt like he had to do it. So stop saying crazy shit like that. You know for a fact that you don't want to get killed at the place, even if it's what the original games do or whatever. That's not fun, it's not cool, don't say it. It won't help the situation. So if you really want a real FNAF, stop saying it so you can get killed there, okay? I can't believe that I had to say that. Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way instantly. If FNAF was real, it would be horrible. Just straight up. 5 kids would have gone missing on one of their locations and the company probably would have closed down. But let's assume that people would still end up going, whether it's because they didn't believe the lies or thought that the government made it up, or because it's their choice, or because they're a YouTuber who wants views. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, assuming that people still went to the restaurant because perhaps maybe they vanished around the area instead of inside the place, what would it be like to live in a real Five Nights at Freddy's? For a kid, it would be pretty awful, but you also wouldn't know it. The world would be dangerous and anyone could be William Afton's next victim, but you wouldn't know that there was a serial killer on the loose with murderous animatronics able to disguise themselves and hide in plain sight that are willing to kill at any moment. But I mean, like, to be fair, that's also like real life, minus the animatronics. For adults, if you have kids, you may be worried. I mean, any parent is always worried about their kids, but if there was a group of kids who went missing in your area, I'm sure that there would at least be a small amount of paranoia. And honestly, it would be reasonable. I mean, I grew up in a house where my father was always worried. So much so that my sister couldn't walk up to her friend's house up the street without him watching to make sure she was okay. And while that would probably be extreme for most parents, if there was a very real threat of kidnapping, I'm sure that there would be a lot of curfews. For the sake of this entire thing, we also have to assume that the police didn't investigate the interiors of the animatronics themselves, despite them smelling like death and leaking body fluids, including blood. Since that's something literally anyone with common sense would check when investigating the disappearance of children and then learning that animatronics are leaking blood and smelling like a dead body. But what of the technology that we see in these games? Would animatronics that can alter their appearance be realistic? No. Of course not. The spring-lock suits, the illusion discs, the twisted animatronics, and the like are all extremely improbable considering the actual technology of not only our time, but the 80s when this would have normally taken place. At least, if we have a rough idea of the timeline, which honestly at this point, we could be totally wrong about the timeline. The technology in the games is so highly advanced that we have absolutely no idea what else they could have access to. They could have smartphones in the 80s, for crying out loud. And if they don't, then William should have capitalized on that rather than murdering countless innocent kids, because he could have literally been a billionaire. The highly advanced technology would have to be disregarded in terms of the abilities of William Afton. So while this seems like a fight that nobody could really win, realistically, it wouldn't be as bad as we think, at least in those terms, since even Chuck E. Cheese, the closest thing to Freddy Fazbear's in our world, obviously, still only has the most simple robotic abilities known to man, despite the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's and their ability to capitalize on that trend by taking some of those concepts, like the advanced robotics, not the dead kids, and then converting them into real life, because like the concepts in the actual pizzeria, not having kids go missing, like I said, that's a bad idea. Although based on comments left on previous videos, especially about how a real life Freddy's would happen, there have been plenty of people that are willing to die, or more likely to go to Chuck E. Cheese if it was more dangerous for some reason. Y'all are weird. But one final query. How would YouTubers handle it? Clearly, there are YouTubers in this world thanks to the mention of matpat, or at the very least game theory in the Fazbear Frights books, so what of the others? Well, we would most likely not be talking about FNAF, something that I'm sure a lot of you would enjoy, but also something that you wouldn't be aware of, which is a whole other can of worms that I won't be getting into today, because you wouldn't know about FNAF because FNAF wouldn't be a thing. However, I'm sure that there would be plenty of true crime and conspiracy YouTubers heading to a or the same Freddy Fazbear's where the kids went missing in order to solve the case, or really just talk about it and get nowhere with it. Sounds like someone I know. Since they don't have the clearance or the equipment to do an actual investigation, or on a potentially closed case. Shane Dawson would 100% have gone there for that same conspiracy theory video, and the psychic twins would definitely have showed up at some point and definitely sensed something, but not quite known what it was. Ooh. MatPat may have made a food theory video about it because he made a food theory video about Chuck E. Cheese, but the thing is, these YouTubers coming to investigate, would they be William's next targets? It's an interesting question because as far as we know, he's only killed one adult, and that was Henry. Every other victim has been a kid, so while they may be in more danger, there would clearly be a bigger issue in trying to deal with these YouTubers, especially if they get killed or die mysteriously shortly after visiting a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. It would probably start some form of curse rumor that would only get more people to go there to try to solve that case. But how would Freddy's have dealt with the pandemic? Would they have made enough to survive the years of quarantine? Or would they, like our Chuck E. Cheese, have to file for bankruptcy? Would they get to open their Pizzaplex? Or would some problematic tweets from William Afton rise and cause the restaurant to get cancelled for calling Chica a he? These are all good questions that we will never really have an answer for because, well, FNAF isn't real. And that's why people keep commenting that nothing in these videos is scary. No, it's not real. It can't actually hurt you. That's why it's not scary. Scary is subjective.
In a 10 pirate ride. Given that this is already in the style of a game in FNAF VR, certainly does help in porting this to an arcade cabinet, but there would be some things that they'd have to change, like turning it into one of those like classic shooter arcade games where the screen scrolls as you fight off bad guys threatening innocent civilians, and it tells you what to shoot and what not to shoot. Yeah, that's the kind of arcade game I see this as, except instead of scrolling sideways, it moves forward like the cart does in the ride in FNAF VR. It could just be a simple aim and shoot kind of thing, but maybe they could add some animatronics sneaking in and throwing some cake or pizza at you that you'd have to shoot to block. This would be in order to end the game early, so that you'd then have to pay more tokens, or just straight up money depending on how the system was run, but based on modern practices I think it would be a token system because it probably would end up making them more money in the long run. In a 9 fun with Plush Trap. Fun with Plush Trap is a simple game that would operate much like it did in FNAF 4 for the arcade cabinet. Despite having more of a presence in FNAF VR, the simplicity of the controls in FNAF 4 would be exactly how this game operates, just in an arcade cabinet, which would require you to just push a button to get the light to shine, and then you let go of it to turn it off and allow Plush Trap to move, giving you the 60-second countdown to a jump scare if you fail to stop him before the timer or if he gets to you before you stop him. It's a simple game with a simple premise, but it would work incredibly well for an arcade machine, and I think plenty of people would play it. And maybe you could have like multiple levels like Donkey Kong style, with various smaller nightmare animatronics like Fun with Nightmare Balloon Boy, Fetch, mini arenas, etc. Assuming that Plush Trap isn't a form of Fetch already. And today, Plush Babies. The two Plush Baby mini games where you have to look around for the various somehow animated baby plushes before they get to you is an interesting concept that with some tweaking could work for an arcade cabinet. It would require a joystick as the spotlight following the joystick, you just move it around to move the spotlight, but it's something that I think would work kinda well, but it would have to be done right. I don't know exactly what done right would look like. I'm an ideas guy, okay, I'm not a programmer, but I'm sure that it wouldn't be that difficult to work out, I hope. It wouldn't be as detailed or scary as the main minigame in FNAF VR, but it would still be something that would work decently well. It may not be the most popular game at the arcade, but that's why you have multiple levels including the hard mode one and the DLC one in the pumpkin patch. Plus, that's why it's only number 8, because it would be harder to get done properly. And it's 7 Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame is some of the most important lore and moments in the series, with the original missing children from the first missing children's incident from 1985 getting their souls released, showing that there are multiple ways to deal with what would later be called Remnant, the infusion of metal and soul, or rather metal and extreme emotion, or maybe in Springtrap's case, metal. Get it? Because his human meat is also in the suit. Never mind. Either way, the Happiest Day minigame is not a simple one-shot minigame. There's some build-up to it. It's like the main story of FNAF 3, so seeing those various minigames and glitches come together into a single arcade cabinet would be a beautiful sight. Almost as beautiful as Glamrock Chica. I mean, as my idea for a real FNAF Pizzeria, which you should go totally watch, by the way. It's in one of the corners. I don't know which one anymore. And at 6, Claw Machine. This is pretty dark, but you people seem to love that kind of thing. So what about a claw machine that was designed to be Baby while she was grabbing Elizabeth? Is that too far? Like a claw machine that's built to look like the baby animatronic on the outside with a window on the stomach where the claw would come out. And that's where the claw machine is. I think that would not only be a fun way to make it a FNAF themed claw machine, but it would also be dark as hell, and I love that kind of thing. Plus, it's about a fictional death, so it's not really distasteful. The idea also stands that this is something out of the box for this list, and I wanted to see what you thought about it, rather than just ranting on about the various minigames in the series for 10 minutes. However, it's time to get back to that, so moving on. Halfway through into number 5, Corn Maze. Corn Maze is one of the most stressful games in all of FNAF VR, compared only to the likes of the hallway from that very same DLC. Corn Maze revolves around you walking through a maze made of walls, not corn, for some reason, in search of colored keys. These keys unlock their respectively colored gate and result in you winning. However, Grim Foxy is chasing you and he always knows where you are. The only way to really get him off your tail, pun intended, is to hide behind cardboard cutouts after he notices you. The maze is also filled with clusters of crows that will alert Foxy to your location if stepped on, which will result in him finding you faster, as well as scaring the living hell out of you. This game, in the same vein as the Help Wanted flat mode version, but controlled with a joystick and buttons, would work incredibly well, and you wouldn't have to find all 4 keys to unlock a secret one. You just don't have a secret one, and you're golden. Man, I'm a genius. And at 4, Security Puppet. Ah yes, Security Puppet. One of the 3 mini-games required to play through to completion for the Lore Keeper ending of FNAF 6. And let's be honest, you should always play mini-games through to completion, otherwise it's just mean. The Security Puppet minigame was pretty simple. Keep the assigned child away from the exit. However, the only catch is that there was no assigned child until the 3rd time booting up the game, where the child will already be outside, thus you failing. We know that this child is Charlie, who goes on to possess the puppet, and this was the only time we've seen a kill from 2 different angles. However, a game kind of like a Where's Waldo kind of thing with security bracelets seems like a wonderful and simple idea, especially when we know what the character is really trying to prevent. Would there be a green bracelet character, or would we only be looking for the green band? I don't know, it would be up to Scott. Also, Scott, or I guess whoever takes over next, please do this. Getting close to the end in number 3, Deliver Pizzas. The minigame game that opens FNAF 6 isn't like anything else we've seen. Okay, well, it's kind of like Take Cake, but this time you're throwing pizzas at kids' screaming faces, and honestly, I love that idea. The fantasy of throwing a pizza in the screaming kid's face has been present ever since those little buggers in my old building bounced their basketball off my door and made my dog go absolutely nuts. But even without my secret thoughts, this would still be a fun arcade game, and I'm not letting you fight me on this. The difficulty of the game was already defined even before the real FNAF 6 started, and it was cool. But then throw in added difficulty of it being a full game and you have a whole new experience. At least, I think it would be at least, so can't be sure unless we try. Penultimately, in at number 2, Midnight Motorist. Midnight Motorist is another one of those games that you could test in FNAF 6 that just feels right. The game is pretty simple, but it's certainly exactly what we need in an arcade cabinet at a pizzeria. A game for the short attention span of a child. You simply drive around until you run into 3 things, then boom, it's game over. You get tickets based on how far you went, or it's one of those lame ones where you don't get tickets at all because there's no feasible way to calculate that, which would also be kind of understandable. Or you just get 3. You know the ones I'm talking about. Midnight Motorist would make a good arcade game aside from the whole yellow guy mustard man debacle, so cut that part out and you're in the money, baby. Go forth and collect the king's tax of tickets and tokens. And finally, in at number 1, Fruity Maze. Fruity Maze, I think, was the obvious first choice here because while yes, the game does progressively get darker, it doesn't have to. You can stick to the original like level 1 Fruity Maze motif. Add a proper goal or objective and then have a weird FNAF version of a Pac-Man style game. Boom, you're done. Just don't make it depressing and allow the player to continue as long as they can, just like a normal Pac-Man game would work, and you're good. And you're golden. Golden Bonnie, dare I say. And maybe throw in a certain level where it's like the messed up dog, flowers, and blood kind of thing just to make sure it's authentic, because knowing these comments, you'll all be disappointed and even get mad if these things don't turn into something dark and twisted. I don't know about something like new being added to the series in the real world, but like, I don't know if you'd want that to be twisted and disturbing, like if it was a new arcade game, for example, but something like Fruity Maze, you'd insist on it. So yeah, I know you're all sick bastards, and I love you for it.